All right, this is in pre-algebra lesson 3.3, mean, median, and mode. This is stuff that I know you have done in the past. Let's just talk about the definitions here. What does mean? That is the technical term. What would be another name for mean? The more second grade word, Sheena? Average, right? Mean means average. We'll talk about that in a second. What does median mean? That's another formal name for what? Middle. The median means middle. The mode is the... No, what does it mean? No, not the number that appears twice. Most. It means the most common, right? So let's talk about this really quick. How do you find the mean of a... Well, first of all, here's what this is. This is all taking... These are called the measures of central tendency, okay? The mean, median, and mode are all measures of central tendency. Pay attention here. I really want you to eyes up here on me. Whenever you have a set of data, okay, you have to understand this. Whenever you have a set of data, what's that mean, a set of data, Ms. Pack?
An amount of data.
What is data? What is that? Just what does that mean?
Numbers.
Like, yeah, a bunch of numbers, right? A set of data would be a bunch of numbers. And it doesn't even have to be a bunch of numbers. I could have some colors. I could have a list of colors. Or I could have a list of the make of cars out there, like Toyotas and Chevys and Fords, and right? I mean, whatever. Usually when we're talking about math, what are we talking about here? Numbers, right? So we're going to have a list or a group of numbers, a set of numbers. Okay? So I might have a set of numbers that looks like this. 2, 4, 8, 2, 9, 3, 5, 4, 2, and 7. Here's my set of data, okay? Here's our set of data here, okay? Makes sense? There are several ways for us to, look, here's the deal. If somebody was to look at this set of data here, and I was to say, so, let's say these were quiz scores, okay? Quiz scores. And I was to say, well, how did the class do? Okay, there's 10 kids in the class, and how did they do? What you would have to do is that if you were somebody just looking at the data, you would actually have to like look at each piece of data and go 2, 4, 8, 2, 9, 3, 5, 4, 2, 7, and then kind of go, okay, that felt like it's a little bit low. You see what I'm saying? It looks like they didn't do very good. But, you know, like you have to kind of like do some work. What these measures of central tendency do is you're going to do the work for somebody so that they can simply look at your work, your answer, and know how people did based on your work. I'll come back to that here in a second. How do I find the mean of this data? What does the mean mean again? It means average. How do I find the average of something? What do I do?
So you would add up all the numbers, like 2 plus 4, and
right.
then you would take the amount of the numbers, which is probably
10.
about 10.
It's 10.
And divide it by 10.
Right. You would literally add up all the numbers and then divide it by how many numbers there are, right? So 2 plus 4 plus 8, that's 14, 15, 16, 25, 6, 27, 28, 28, 37, 46. So you have, so this adds up to 46, okay? And then I'm going to divide that by the total number of numbers, which is 10. 46 divided by 10 is 4.6. So here's the deal. The mean of this data is 4.6. That's the average. Does that make sense? Okay. The average of this data is 4.6. The median, how do I find the median of the data? How do I find the median to find the middle? Do I go like this? Do I go up, that 9, that right, this 9 right here is right in the middle of the data. Is that what I mean by middle? Like whatever number is in the middle of your pile? No, what does that mean?
So you put all the numbers in numerical order, and then you see what number is used the most.
That's right. You put them in numerical order. You're going to put them in either ascending or descending order. Doesn't really matter. What's ascending order mean? What does ascending order mean? Going up. Very good. What does descending order mean? Going down. It doesn't really matter. You just want to put them in order. So here's what you do. You go 2. I would do this. I would start crossing them out. 2. There's another 2. There's another 2. There is a 3. There's a 4. there's another 4, there's a 5, there's a 7, and an 8, and a 9. There's my order, right? And now how would I know whether or not I have them all here? You got to count them, right? You got to make sure that there's 10. There's 10 here. There needs to be 10 here. Agreed? Makes sense? Okay. So then, because you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10. Very nice. The middle one is, this is how I do it. And even now, as your teacher, this is what I would do. Because if you have a big set here, I mean, are you just going to eyeball it and go, this one looks like the middle? Nope. So what you're going to do is you're literally going to start crossing them off. One on the top, one off the bottom. One off the top, one off the bottom. Or you could go 2 off the top, 2 off the bottom. And then you go, oh, there is no middle one. There's the 4 and the 4. It's actually right in between those two. Does that make sense? It's in between those two, because we're going to go cross out, cross out. If they land in between, then you actually have to find the average of the two that it's in between. So 4 plus 4 is 8, divided by 2 is 4, right? The average of 4 and 4 is 4. That means that the median of this data is 4. What would have happened if in my data it came out to 4 and a 7? This is here's the deal right there. Then you go 4 plus 7 is 11, divided by 2 is 5.5. That would be your median. Does that make sense? Or if it actually did land on the number, if there was an odd number of numbers here, it would land on a number, and that's the median. It just means middle. Once you've lined it up, the middle one is it. If there is no middle, because it's an even number, then you have to find the average of the two that are surrounding the middle. You've done that before, I know. Right? Okay. What does mode mean? Again? What does mode mean? Yeah.
The greatest number.
No, not greatest number.
Or most.
What does it mean?
Most used number.
The most common number, right? Mode means most. It's a most common number, right? What number shows up the most? Which number 2 is. So here's the deal. The measures of central tendency are not the same almost always, right? They're not the same almost always. In this situation, the mean is 4.6, the median is 4, and the mode is 2. They're all very viable ways for me to show you and show somebody data without them having to look at the whole set of data, okay? All of a sudden now, if I go, here is the grades, if I was to show Mr. Jones, well, here's all the grades, and I show him the grades, he would have to take some time to look at it and go, oh, okay, right. Or if I could just tell him the mean was 4.6, he'll go, oh, they didn't do very good on that quiz, did they? Or if I said the median, 4, and if I said, oh man, the mode, how bad would that look? He'd be like, oh man, everybody did horrible. I mean, the most common score was 2. Does that make sense? No. Make sense? Here's the deal. Let's talk about this. Let's do this right here. Let's just say that here is your, you've had 5 quizzes in your history class, okay? You've had 5 quizzes in your history class, and on your quizzes, they went like this. Here's your quiz scores. You had a 25, you had 100, you got a 10, you got 100, and you got a 40, okay? These are your quiz scores in history. If you had the option of telling your parents how you're doing in history using the mean, the median, or the mode, let's figure out which one you would likely choose to tell your parents how well you're doing. So let's do this right here. The mean. How do I find mean again? Add them all up. So let's do that. 25, so it's 275. So 275 divided by 5 comes out to, that's a 55%. So the mean of this data is a 55%. That's called a big fat F, right? That's your average. You would have an F average here. Okay? The median, what would be the median? So the median is that we line them all up in order. So we would go 100, 40, 25, and 10. We would go cross off, cross off, cross off, cross off. Oh, the median is a 40, also a bigger fat F, right? An F, right? That's horrible. The mode of this data, though, the one that comes up most often is 100. So you can see where Technically, you'd be like, Mom and Dad, guess what? My mode in history is 100%. They'd be like, good job, Jay, you're doing great there, right? Right? Now, here's the deal. That's why using the measures of central tendency, you can manipulate things to make it look either worse or better, depending on what you want to do, right? Does that make sense? You can make it look worse or make it look better, depending on how it goes. So, none of them are right or wrong. They're just different. What would you do here? I have a question. Which measure of central tendency would you use if I wanted to know what is the most likely make of car out in the parking lot? Meaning, like Toyota, Saturn, that's a Toyota, Saturn, Honda, Ford, Chevy, Lamborghini, whatever. You got all these different things out there. So here's the deal. No, listen, stop talking. My question is this. If I was to walk out there and we were to go out there and look at makes and models, we might find a Chevy, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, another Toyota, another Honda. We might find a Ford, and then we find another Toyota. Here's the deal. I want you to right now try and find for me the mean of this data. Find for me the mean or the average of this data. How do you find the average of this data? How do you add up words? Can you add up words?
No.
Jay, can you add up words? But can you add up words? Because we're like, what is Chevy plus Toyota? The point is, you can't find the mean of this. You can't find the median either. Why can't you find the median? You can't put them in order. Which one? There's no value, right? There's no value here. There's no you can't put them in ascending order or descending order. The only way for me to do this is to use the mode, right? Which one shows up the most often? So whenever you're dealing with non-numerical data, really the only way to describe the data would be to use the mode. Does that make sense? And that's really the only thing. The mode is not very effective usually when you're dealing with numbers. Because, especially if you're going to use numbers that are big, what's the odds of numbers showing up twice is very low. Does that make sense? So anyway, what would the mode be of this then? What Toyota shows up the most? So you'd go, oh wow. In other words, there's more Toyotas in the parking lot than any other. And that would probably be true. Toyota is the most popular vehicle in America. Yeah.
So you could never solve that?
I'm hearing talking and I cannot hear the question. No, listen, there's no maybe anything. If you don't have a number here, there's nothing to add. You can't add those two together. You have to add them up and divide by that many. That makes no sense. Stop. No. What are you talking about? There's no number here. How do you do it? If there's a 5, an 8, a 7, and a 4, you add them up and get a number, right? There has to be a number, and then you divide that number. When you add these up, there's not a number. There's no adding them up. How do you add up Chevy and Toyota and Honda? You add them up. That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. Okay. That would be totally different. That's not what we're saying. I'm saying what cars are out there. You can't add them up. There's no way to do it. Anyway, let me see what else there is here. Okay, here we go. Listen up. I'm going to show you something else. So what do you think is the most accurate? What is the most accurate of these to tell you to give you the best information? Which one would you say is the most accurate, Sheena? You would say the mean. Okay, now I'm going to show you something that will disprove that. Okay, I'm going to show you something that will disprove that. Okay, so pay attention. What if, and this is the truth, they do this all the time. How expensive is it to live and own a house in Walnut Creek right now? What would you say? Would you say that Walnut Creek's pretty expensive to live in? It is. Walnut Creek is considered, by the nation's standards, it would be very expensive to live. Here's my question. If I said, how much is the average house, or how much is the normal house in Walnut Creek? If say somebody from Washington State was going to come down here and he wants to live in Walnut, or he wants to live in this area, and he goes, well, how much do houses cost in Walnut Creek? What would you say? Give me some numbers. What would be the average house in Walnut Creek? Just the normal house in Walnut Creek. What would you say?
800,000.
I think that's a very good number. I think that it's somewhere like, we'll say that the normal number out here is 750,000. In Walnut Creek, that's probably true. We'll say 800,000 to be round, okay? So we're saying that that's what you're saying. And I think that's about right. How do they come up with that number is, I mean, people, how do they know how much any house is worth? How do you know that the houses in Martinez are worth less than the houses in Walnut Creek? What are they doing? How do they find that out?
Like location and how big the house is.
Yeah, but how do they know? I mean, how are they coming up with that number? They actually, I mean, you're right. It's the houses around here are about 800,000. How do we know that that's about how much they cost?
Wait.
How do we know?
Find out the stuff you used to have.
Yeah, here's the deal. How do I know that the average house, that the normal house here in Walnut Creek is about 800,000? Is because let's look at last week's data and go, last week there was this house sold and it sold for 900,000, and that last week a different house sold for 700,000, and last week a different house sold for $1 million, and the same thing last week another house sold. You look at what they've sold for. Does that make sense? You look at recently, what did they sell for? So hold on, let's do this. Let's decide that we're going to figure out how much houses cost in Walnut Creek. So on one day, last week, one house sold for $700,000. Possible? Sure. A different house in that same week on a different street sold for $900,000. Okay. Possible? Absolutely. On that same week, a different house sold for $650,000. Possible? Absolutely. Another house up on the hill, on a hill that has like 10 acres, it sold for $10 million. Now, hold on. Is that possible?
Yes.
Absolutely. There are houses in Walnut Creek that if you're on the hill and you own 10 acres, it would be, I won't make it 10, I'll make it 5 million. We'll just make it, hold on, $5 million. So that would be 5,000 K. 5 million, shh. $5 million. Now here's the deal. If you were to talk to a person from Washington and say how much the houses cost, let's do this right here. Actually, I'll do one more house. I'll do one more and have it be 650. A different house sold for 650,000. So here's the deal. Let's look at this. What is the mean of this data? The mean. See, you were saying that the mean is the most accurate. Let's do the mean. What is 700 plus 900? That's 1.6 million. 2.25, 2.9, and so that would be 7.9 million divided by 5. What is 7.9 million divided by 5? Somebody? I got my...
19 and 4/5.
Yeah, I think it's 19.
19 and
1.9 million. It's 1 point. So the mean would be 1.1 million. 1 million. I'll write it out. 920,000. That's not true. 8,000. Right. Right. Very good. Okay, that would be the mean of the data. That's the mean. Question.
You're gonna explain it, but
Yeah, just wait.
okay. It's not.
The mean of the data says it's $2 million. Agreed? Is that the average? Is that the normal house in Walnut Creek? No, it's not. And so that's where, do you see where average doesn't always give you the most accurate picture? It just doesn't.
79.
So listen, does that make sense? 1 point, that's $2 million. So hold on. The other way to do it would be to go with the mode, right? Another one would be the mode. Which one comes up most often? And that would be 650. Is that accurate? Is that truly accurate?
Yes.
No, I would say it's not. Those are the two bottom ones, right? Those are the two bottom ones. And then you have a massive mansion, and then you've got, so then Whenever you talk about housing prices, the other option is the median. You put it in the middle and you line them up and you go, okay, that would be 650, 650, 700, 900, and then 5 million, right? And you go up, 700, the median. Guess what what do you think that they use when they're talking about housing prices?
700,000.
They use the median. They use the median because here's the deal. This set of data here has what is called an outlier. What is an outlier? Do you remember this? What's an outlier?
Basically one number that's extremely low or extremely low.
There it is. It's a number that is way away from the rest of the group. If you have a number, what if a dad sold his son a house for $1? What if a dad sold his son a house for $1? And all of a sudden, if you added that to your list, that would skew this list something horrible down, right? I mean, like if this number here, if that $5 million house wasn't there, and a dad sold his house to his son for $1, that would make it see, if we did the average of these houses, what would it look like? It would be way down, right? That $1 isn't normal. It's an outlier. It is not normal. It is way away from the rest of the group. So whenever you have an outlier, do you know what you normally do with outliers?
You cross them out.
You ignore them. You ignore them. They're not a part of this. So if you were really going to do an average, you would take all the numbers except the outlier. Does that make sense? But what's cool about the median is that the median allows you to keep the outlier in there and still come up with a pretty normal number, a pretty good number, because the outlier is not going to really make much of an effect. Does that make sense? So anyway, outliers are what?
Really high or really low?
Numbers that are way high or way low, and if you're going to do an average, you ignore it. Does that make sense? You would ignore it. All right. Yeah.
Kind of random, but my giant house in Pennsylvania was like.
All right. I'm going to give you your homework now, okay? I'm going to give you your homework. One thing that they do is this. You got to pay attention to the question. I'm going to give you some data here really quick. Sometimes they say, how many modes are there here? How many modes are there in this? There's one mode, and the mode would be 2, but there's one mode. What if on this data I give this? How many modes are there now in this data? 2, and the modes are 2 and 4. The mode is the one that has the most, right? In this situation, there's 2 that have 2. What if I did this? How many modes are there now?
1.
Back to 1, right? And if I put another 2 up here, how many modes? 2. What about this? Well, here, I want you to give me this. Oops. How many modes are there here?
None.
There are no modes. Modes mean there has to be at least 2 of something, right? There's no mode here if there's nothing that doubles up. Make sense? Okay. I believe that we're in good shape here. So let me give you your homework. Question there, Gigi?
Are we all using the calculator?
Yeah, I don't care about that at all.
Jade.
It is Thursday. We're going to go page 140, 1 through 21 even. Since I'm allowing you to use your calculator, I have no problem. You should be able to do this with no problem. Okay?